All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Let us begin. Beautiful daf ahead of us today in the exciting sugya of Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim. Begin by thanking our sponsors for this morning's shir, to thank Sammy and Malka Esterson for dedicating all the shiurim and drushos this month in memory of their parents, Yitzchok Leib ben Aaron Cohen, Sarah Rachel Bas Baruch Avram, and Hinda Bas Henech Ephraim. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshamos will have an aliyah and the family in Nechama. We also thank our Daf Yomi sponsors in the source of Rafu Shalema, for Ruchama Aviva Bas Sheina Chana, and for Achal Yehudis Bas Tova Gittel. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, Kol Chola Yisrael will have a complete and enduring refuah. And I both say with that, let us begin. So we are up to, today's daf is Tes Vav 15. We are picking up in Meretz Hashem on Yud Daled Amud Beis 14b. 14b, excuse me, we are picking up at the two dots, 2, 4, 6, 7 lines off from the bottom. So just to reorient ourselves a little bit. So if you remember again, we are in the sugya of Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim. So we had a really beautiful daf yesterday. I'll just repeat something that I mentioned in the shir yesterday, just by way of hakdama. I think it's an important hakdama and helps to frame the sugya a little bit. The Divrei Chaim, the Sanzarav, makes an amazing observation. He says that the gematria, the numerical value of Vayishlach Yaakov Malochim, the fun of Al Isa Achiv Eitza Seir, right? The first pasuk of past week's parasha, the numerical value, the gematria of that pasuk is 2,521, and that is the same gematria of Asher Kiddushana B'Mitzosav V'Tzivanu Lahadlik Ner Shel Chanukah. Same exact gematria, 2,521. And the Rebbe Chaim says, you see from here that the hachana, the preparation for Chanukah, already has to begin on Parshas Vayishlach. So the truth is, in a normal year, what that means is, because 2 weeks, a week and a half, because usually Shabbos Chanukah is Parshas Miketz. This year, of course, is unique in that Shabbos Chanukah is this coming week, Parshas Vayeshev. So there's an incredible idea of hachana, of preparing oneself for the Yom Tov of Chanukah. Chanukah is the Yom Tov of incredible light, of incredible Kiddusha. But like anything in life, if you want to tap into the Kiddusha, to the holiness of something, you have to be prepared. And I just want to point out how incredible it is that we're doing this sugya of Tum and Tara now. Because at the end of the day, what is Chanukah all about? Chanukah is all about Tum and Tara. Chanukah is all about Masarta Tameim Biyat Tahorim. Ribbon Shalom, you gave over that which was impure into the hands of that which is pure. And you give over the Tumah into the hands of the Tara. And the ability to be mavchin, the ability to distinguish between that which is Tamei and that which is Tahar, ultimately, again, is one of the most, it's really the pinnacle accomplishment of the Jew. Because sometimes it's so different to be able to distinguish between Kodesh L'chol, between Tumah and Tara, between that which is kosher, that which is treif. And so the fact that we're learning this sugya, which began on Shabbos, Parshas Vayishlach, and will Emir Hashem conclude on the first day of Chanukah, affords us an opportunity to become versed in the halachas of Tumah and Tara, which ultimately prepares us for the very essence of Chanukah. Because if you want to really tap in to the light of this incredible Yom Tov, then you have to find the ability to distinguish between that which is Tamei and that which is Tar. So I will say, so many times we see in the Daf, just incredible timing, how it is that the Lublina Rav gave us such a privilege to be able to learn sugyas that tie in with the time. Literally, again, the daf always ties in with the time. And the ability to do this sugya during these days of hachana is quite incredible. So we'll say with that, let us continue. So we'll say, so remember again, to follow along in the flow of the Mishnah. So remember again, in yesterday's daf, we spent our entire time focusing on Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim. So remember again, Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim was the one who introduced us to the concept that when destroying consecrated items, it appears that we aren't concerned if there's an exposure to a heightened level of tumah. So it turned out from Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim, it sounded like you could burn a rishon together with a sheni. So remember again, we had a whole discussion in the Gemara, how exactly is that happening? Food items can't convey tumah to each other. Maybe it's midrabanan, maybe it's the liquid on top of the food. Okay, suffice it to say, Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim is telling us that you can burn a rishon with a sheni, even though you are exposing the sheni to a heightened level of tumah. Rabbi Akiva then came along, and about saying again, remember what was Rabbi Akiva's great chiddush? Rabbi Akiva's chiddush was that you could even burn what? A shlishi with an av. a shlishi with an av. I will say you have to chazer these dapim, right? Mambish, otherwise it's difficult to retain it. Right, so you could burn a shlishi with an av. Remember again, the truma, the oil was a shlishi. Ultimately, again, the ner was an av because the Gemara set it up as dealing with the ner shal matachas. A metal ner, metal has this unique quality that when exposed to a corpse takes on the same tuma as the corpse itself. That whereas tuma, when it's transmitted, always goes down a level in transmission. There's one exception to that. There is one case of lateral transference of tuma, and the only case of lateral transference of tuma is metal. That's when metal is exposed to tumas meis, metal takes on the same level of that tuma. So therefore, that was Rabbi Akiva's case. Rabbi Akiva said that Allah so you can burn a rishon with an av. Good, seemingly same idea as Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim. But say then in the flow of the Mishnah, what happens? Rabbi Meir comes along. And Rabbi Meir says, Midivrayim, from their words we learn that you could burn Truma Tahora with Tameo on Pesach. But remember again, why is this in Pesachim? This is in Pesachim because of this statement of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir said, now that I learned that both according to Rabbi Chanina and according to Rabbi Akiva, that you could go ahead and expose a lower form of Tumah to a heightened level of Tumah, therefore what? On Erev Pesach, when I have to destroy Chametz, I often have two different Chametz bundles. I have of truma, let's say. I have truma that is tamei, truma that is tahar. But when you burn them together, you are exposing the tahar truma to the tamei truma, and it appears, says Rabbi Meir, based on what we learned, that is not problematic. So we'll say that's where we pick up now. So Rabbi Meir midivrayim lamadu, midivrayim deman. So the Gemara says when Rabbi Meir says from their words, whose words is Rabbi Meir referring to? Ilema midiv Rabbi Chanina skana kohanim. If you want to say it's Rabbi Chanina's Skana Kohanim, that really can't be why. Me dummy, because Rabbi said Rabbi Chanina's case is not really comparable to the Truma case on Erev Pesach. Why not? Hasam Tamei V'Tamei, Hacha Tahar V'Tamei. Because Rabbi say for a very simple reason. In Rabbi Chanina's Skana Kohanim's case, you have two cases of Tumah, right? True, one is a Rishon, one is a Sheni, and Rabbi Chanina is allowing you to burn them together. In the Truma case, Rabbi say Truma on Erev Pesach, what do you have? You have Truma Tahora with Truma Tameya. So you can't bring a raya, you can't bring a proof from Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim that you could burn Truma Tahora with Truma Tameya, because that's not his case. Rabbi Chanina's case is burning two Tamei items together. Just the difference is, one has a greater level, one has a lesser level. But that doesn't necessarily tell me that I could burn something that's Tamei and Tahor together. Elo, we did Rabbi Akiva. Obviously, maybe it's from Rabbi Akiva, to which the Gemara says, no, me dummy, hasam pastel v'tamei, hachar tar v'tamei. Again, Rabbi say it's not compared to Rabbi Akiva's case either. What's Rabbi Akiva's case? Rabbi Akiva's case is with the shlishi with an av. Rabbi say we also call the shlishi, another name for shlishi, pastel, right? Because remember again, once you Tuma bottoms out at a shlishi, at least by truma, right? There's nothing past the shlishi. Only by kadshim is there a revi'i. So it can't be comparable to Rabbi Akiva's case, because Rabbi Akiva's case is a tamei with an av. So I will say, but the case of Erev Pesach is something that is tamei together with something that is tar, to which the Gemara says, Neima kasav Rabbi Meir, masnisin ba'ava tuma doraisa, vlad hatuma dirabanan. Oh, I will say, it could very well be that according to Rabbi Meir, the way Rabbi Meir understands the case in the Mishnah, is that the Mishnah is talking about a case of an avatuma doraisa, that is being burned with a vlad hatuma dirabanan. So we'll say maybe the case according to Rabbi Meir, the case in the Mishnah is a case of an item that is tamei mid'oraisa and an item that is tamei mid'rabanan. Then I will say, and they're burned together. Now remember, an item that is tamei mid'rabanan, what's its status d'oraisa? It's tahar. It's tahar. So the Mishnah does have a case, therefore, of a tamei item being burned together with a tar item, the mid'oraisa tar ma'alya. Because mid'oraisa, that item which is tamei, that mid'oraisa, that item which is tamei mid'rabanan, is really tar, top of tesvav, umay midivrehem. So I will say, remember again, I want to be clear, the Mishnah is telling us that Rabbi Meir there's a progression in the Mishnah. There's the sheet of Rabbi Chanina, there's the sheet of Rabbi Akiva, and then there's Rabbi Meir's statement. Rabbi Meir's statement from their words. From their words, we learn that you could burn tahar and tamei truma on Erev Pesach together. We're trying to find out whose words. Whose words? So umay midivrayim, midivrei Rabbi Chanina skana kohanim. So we'll say first approach is the Gemara suggests that maybe Rabbi Chanina skana kohanim's case, Rabbi say of the Rishon and the Sheni, might actually be a case. The Rishon is an item that is tamei mid'oraisa. The quote unquote Sheni is an item which is only tamei midrabanan. and yet Rabbi Chanina is allowing you to go ahead and burn them together, which effectively Rabbi Osai is doing what? Doing what? Burning a tamei item together with what? A tar item. And therefore, the Meir says, based on this, on Erev Pesach, you could burn Truma Tahora with Truma Tameya. So Amar Reish Lakish Mishum Bar Kafra, Masnisin Ba'af HaTuma B'Doraisa Umay Midivreim. So ultimately, again, comes along Reish Lakish. He says in the name of Bar Kafra, Bar Kafra Masnisin Ba'af HaTuma Doraisa, Vlada Tuma Doraisa. No. So Rabbi Reish Lakish disagrees. He says, no, that is not Rabbi Chanina's case. Rabbi Chanina's case is not an Avat Tuma D'Oraisa, and ultimately, again, a Vlad HaTuma D'Rabbanan. No. Rabbi Chanina's case is as we thought from the beginning. We are dealing with biblical Tuma. You have two items in Rabbi Chanina's case, Basar Kachim, sacrificial meat. One item is an Av, and one item is a Vlad, which we'll call a Rishon. Right? So the Gemara, or Sheni for that matter. So the Gemara says, or I should say, a Rishon and a Sheni. The Gemara says, Umay midivreihem. So therefore, again, Rabbi Meir says from their words. So therefore, both say, Rabbi Chanina's case cannot serve as the source for burning Truma Tahora and Truma Tamei on Erev Pesach. Why not? Why not? Because Rabbi Chanina is dealing with two cases, two items that are both Tamei. So therefore, again, I can't bring a raya to Tamei and Tar from two cases that are Tamei. So therefore, who is Rabbi Meir drawing on when he reaches this conclusion that you could burn Truma Tamei or Truma Tahora together on Erev Pesach? To which the Gemara says, Umay Medivrei Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua. It's from the words of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, and we'll say specifically as we're going to see Rabbi Yoshua. Hey, Rabbi Yoshua, which Rabbi Yoshua are you referring to? We'll say this is great. This is great. Ilay Mahar Rabbi Yoshua. If you want to say it's the final Rabbi Yoshua, listen to this. This is great. It's great. This nan Chavish al Truma. Follow this. You have a barrel of wine of Truma. Shenolad la Safek Tuma. They both say, listen to this case. You have a barrel of Truma wine. And they both say, in this Truma wine, Shenolad ba, literally again, is a Safek Tuma surrounding this wine. Look at Rashi, I both say for just a moment. It's Rashi right across from Hagol Sabach. Rashi says, Shenolad, She'ira, Kegon, Shenichnas Adam Tamei Lisham, Safek Nagaba, Safek Lo Nagaba. So remember again, we had this Gemara last week or the week before, where you walk into your house, you left chametz in or you left truma in one corner, you find it in a different corner. The discussion about you have to assume that it's tummy because maybe someone came in, moved it along. This idea that halacha l'maisa, a person who is not careful with other people's stuff is also not careful in halachas of tum and tara. The reverse could also be true. Maybe somebody who's not careful with tum and tara is also not careful with other people's stuff. So I'll say, what happens? I have a barrel of truma wine. What truma? Ruvain walks in, and I happen to know that Ruvain is not careful with the halachas of tum and tara. So now maybe there's a concern that what? Maybe Ruvain touched the wine. So that's chavish al truma. Shenolad la safek tuma. So we'll say this is a very interesting case. So what do you do with this barrel? What do you do? How do you treat this barrel now that is safek tuma? So watch this. Rabbi Eliezer omrim haisa munachas b'makom atorfa yanichanam akos hamutzna. So Rabbi Eliezer says this essentially: if the barrel was sitting in an exposed area, then ultimately again you have to put it in a secure area. As the Gemara says, if the barrel was uncovered, you have to cover it. So both say essentially Rabbi Eliezer says it's like this. Rabbi Eliezer holds that halacha l'maisa, you still have to take care to safeguard the barrel. So even though now this barrel is safek tamei, and there's not really anything I could really do with it, but you can't just leave it alone. You still have to safeguard it as you would safeguard any regular truma. So if the barrel was open, you have to close it up. It's in an exposed area, you have to put it in a secure area. Both say, watch this. Comes along Rabbi Yoshua, and Rabbi Yoshua says no. If it was hidden away, right? If it was in a secure area, you could even put it in an exposed area. And if the barrel was covered, you could uncover it. And what Rabbi Yoshua holds is that once the barrel has a suffix tum associated with it, pretty much we have no obligation of any level of vigilance with it. So Rabbi says, how is this helpful for us? If you look at Rashi, Rashi says, skip down to the end of that Rashi, Alma, Sham Rabbi Yoshua. We'll say there's a whole other machlokes here, Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer about Yesh Im Masores, Yesh Im Mikra, which we're not going to get into now because it's not really material for our discussion. But skip to the end of that Rashi. Alma, Sham Rabbi Yoshua, Techevan in Ruya Lahad Laka, Yachal Ligrom La Tuma. We'll say, what is Rabbi Yoshua saying? We'll say, what do you do with this barrel of wine? Right? Again, I have a barrel of wine now. It's suffix tummy. We'll say, what do you do with it? What do you do with it? What do you do with it? You destroy it. So essentially, what Rabbi Yoshua says is, once you have to destroy it anyway, we don't really care what you do with it. So therefore, again, you want to uncover it, uncover it. You want to put it in exposed air, put it in exposed. We don't care. Therefore, what is the Gemara suggesting? The Gemara is suggesting, Rabbi Yoshua is the source for Rabbi Meir's statement. What does Rabbi Meir say? Rabbi Meir says, "Midivreihem lamadnu." From their words, we learned that what? On Erev Pesach, you could burn truma tahora with truma tim, which essentially, what is Rabbi Meir saying? Once you have to destroy something, pretty much we don't care about what, right? We don't care about its tara status. We just don't care. It doesn't matter. Where does Rabbi Meir get this from? He gets it from Rabbi Yoshua. Because what does Rabbi Yoshua say? That halacha l'maisa, once the barrel of truma wine becomes suffix tuma, has a suffix tuma status, pretty much we don't care what happens to it. You're going to have to destroy it anyway. So you want to uncover it, uncover it. You want to put it in an exposed area, put it in an exposed area. Look at the end of that Rashi. Rabbi Yoshua. Since the barrel of wine is suitable for nothing other than burning, yachal ligrom la tuma. So we'll say you could even go ahead and cause it to become more tamei. So therefore, again, I will say the way we have to read the Mishnah is Rabbi Meir says midivreim lamadnu. Midivreim really means from the words of Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua allows you to go ahead and take a suffix tamei barrel of truma wine and expose it and just leave it alone, just leave it out. Would certainly allow you to go ahead and burn truma tamei or truma tahora and Erev Pesach. The Gemara says no. Me, dummy, how can you compare those cases? Hasam grama ba'alma, hacha bi'adayin. I will say those are two very distinct cases. I will say, remember again, in the case of the barrel of suffix truma wine, in the barrel of truma wine that is suffix tamei status. So what Rabbi Yoshua allows you to do is kind of leave it alone. In other words, he's not allowing you to actively cause it to become tamei. He's just saying you don't really have to guard it anymore. So you want to leave it uncovered. You want to go ahead and put it in a public place. That's fine. That's very different than what? Very different than what? Actively biadayim burning an item that is tamei together with an item that is tahor. To which the Gemara says the cases are very dissimilar. Ella ha Rabbi Yoshua. We'll say this is even better. I said the last one was great. This is even better. Rather, you're right. It's a different Rabbi Yoshua. But I'll say which Rabbi Yoshua? No, same Rabbi Yoshua, different case. This time, listen to this case. Chaver shel truma shenishbara begat ha'elyona. But listen to this case. I have a barrel of truma wine. The truma wine is totally tar. So I'll say, if you could imagine over here in this case, I have a wine press. So there's like an upper vat and a lower vat. And the upper vat pours into lower, which would make sense. Normally, I guess you would press the grapes maybe in the upper vat, and then the wine would drip down leak down into the lower vat, pour down, spill down to the lower vat. So here's the case. I have a barrel of truma wine that broke in the upper vat. Okay, the upper vat. In the lower vat, what do I have? Betachtona chulin tamein. Let's say in the bottom vat, I have chulin tamein. Right? Chulin. Now, understand, chulin tamein, under normal circumstances, is really no big deal, right? You could eat chulin tamein. The only time you wouldn't eat chulin tamein is if a kohen wants to maintain his tar status, or there were people who were makbid to eat chulin betara. They were makbid to go ahead and eat their chulin, even unconsecrated property in a state of ritual purity. What's the problem? The problem is that if the truma wine drips into the chulin tamein, what's going to happen? So two things. First of all, again, you have a mixture, what's called meduma. Anytime you have a mixture of truma and chulin, that's problematic. But also for our purposes, the truma wine becomes what? Becomes tamei, right? Once it falls into chulin tamein, the truma wine becomes tamei as well. So now watch this case. So now remember, barrel of truma wine broke in the upper vat. And again, it's going to leak down into the chulin tamein, which does two things. Number one, it will render the chulin tamein unusable, and it'll also be metamei the truma. So watch this. Says the Gemara, Mod Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yoshua, Shim yachol lahatzil mimena revius betara yatzil. So Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yoshua agree that halacha l'maaseh, if you could save a revius at least a revius of the truma wine betara, ultimately, again, you should do so. Now, what does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. It's Rashi in the wider lines, 2 lines in. Mod Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yoshua. Afa pisha nechlaku be'en yachol b'seifa fine. Shim yachol lahotzi men aravias p'tara. Im yachol lachzer achar kelim tohorin. Ulekabel kodem sheteireit kula l'sochat tmein. V'kabel heimen aravias haglog yatzil. So you remember Rashi, yachzer acharein v'al yikablen bekein tmein kadei lahatzil asachulin. Listen to this. So Here are your options in front of you. Options in front of you are, you have immediate access to ritually impure utensils, which you could grab right now, catch all of the truma wine. So if you do that, what happens? Let's analyze this. If you do this, what happens? What happens? You're metame the truma, actively metame the truma, but what? What do? You save the chulin. Or you could go ahead and take a few more moments and get tahar utensils, in which case you will be able to save some of the truma wine and maintain its tahar, only some of it, but ultimately, again, you'll lose the chulin. So interesting enough, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yoshua say that if you're able to save more than a revius or more of the truma wine, go for it. Go for it. Then go ahead and get the tahar kalim, save the revius or more of truma wine, even though what? In doing so, first of all, you're going to lose some truma wine, obviously, and you're also going to lose the chulin. Ve'im lav, but Rabbi say at the end of the day, if it's not possible to go ahead, so Rabbi say, now let's say it's not possible. Let's say there are no kalim tahorin here. So Rabbi says, so if there are no kalim tahorin, what are my choices? What are my choices? No kalim tahorin, what are my choices? Choice one, let it go. And if I let it go, what happens? Everything is lost, right? The truma is lost because it becomes tamei. The chulin is lost because it has truma mixed in. Or possibility two is grab kalim tameim and do what? Catch the truma wine. In doing so, you'll be matami the truma wine, but at least what? You save the chulin. Suppose you hear it's an interesting shaila. So again, I can leave everything alone and just lose everything, or I could go ahead and quote unquote catch the truma. But remember, when you catch truma, what are you doing? You're actively being metame the truma, but you're at least saving the chulin. So ve'im lav, if it's impossible to save any amount of the truma wine in tar kelim, Rabbi Eliezer omei tered v'tetame v'al yitamena biyad. Rabbi Eliezer says, sometimes it is better to just allow things to happen rather than actively defile things. Rabbi say this is a very profound Gemara as well, because Rabbi Eliezer is saying is essentially sometimes when you can't prevent a situation from occurring, it is sometimes better just to let it occur on its own without you being an active participant in it. So at the end of the day, the truma wine is lost. It's a sunk cost, right? There's nothing to do about it. So my only shaila is, the only thing I could do is, I can catch the truma wine in the tamei kli, but then that's me actively causing the truma wine to become tamei. So Elazar says, don't do anything. Don't do anything. Unfortunately, let the wine flow into the chulin wine. Everything is lost. Watch this. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, af yitma'ena b'yad. Yitamena b'yad. Rabbi Yeshua says, no. Catch the truma wine in the kli, and ultimately, again, go ahead and at least save the chulin. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here, we'll say, why does Rabbi Yeshua allow you to catch the truma wine? Because Rabbi Yeshua will say what? It's going to become tummy anyway. In other words, Rabbi Yeshua is going to say, you're not doing anything. Meaning, it's not the pshat that if you don't bring the tummy kalim to catch the wine is going to be fine. The truma wine is lost. So once you already know that it's lost, you might as well do what you can to do a little bit of damage control, and at least in this case, what? Save the chulin. So we'll see here what's happening over here. Rabbi Eliezer says, just leave everything alone. Leave it alone, because at the end of the day, for you to actively catch the truma wine in a tamei kli is you actively causing the truma wine to become tamei. Rabbi Yeshua says, that's ridiculous. That's not true. The truma wine is going to become tamei no matter what I do. But at least if I could catch the truma wine, I could save the chulin. So you see that's what Rabbi said, that Rabbi Yeshua holds that in a case where an item is already going to become destroyed, we don't really care what happens to it in the process of destruction. Comes along Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Meir says, Midivrayam lamadnu, from the sheet of Rabbi Yeshua, what do we learn? Rabbi say that's what? That you could burn Truma Tameya together with Truma Tahora on Erev Pesach. Why? Because Rabbi Yeshua's entire sheet is once something is going to be quote unquote destroyed anyway, what you do in that process is fundamentally irrelevant. So it says the Gemara Ihachi. So therefore, Rabbi say it turns out, so this is really fascinating. Again, it's an interesting way that the Mishnah reads, because essentially what's happening is like this. You have Rabbi Chanina Skanakonim, you have Rabbi Akiva, and then you have Rabbi Meir saying, Midivrehem lamadnu, from their words we learn that you can burn Truma Torah, Truma Tumei on Pesach together. And we would have automatically assumed that Midivrehem refers to who? either Rabbi Yechanina or Rabbi Akiva. Yet, amazingly enough, it does not refer to either of them, but rather, again, it refers to the words of Rabbi Yoshua, in this case of the broken barrel of Truma, which is incredible. Ihachi, hai midivrei midvarav miboile. If that's the case, why does Rabbi Meir say midivrei from their words? It should say what? From his words, because after all, it's learned out from the Shita of Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Eliezer disagrees, to which the Gemara says, Hachi kamar, mi machlok and Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbi Yoshua lamadnu. What Rabbi Meir means is, from the machlokes of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, we learned this halacha. Dekanami diktani, moda Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua, shmamina. And obviously we'll see later on, because the end of the Mishnah ends off by saying that both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua both agree. Shesarf and Zuliatzma, Zuliatzma. So both say what's interesting is as follows. Now the progression of the Mishnah makes sense. Because remember again, I will say, when we read it yesterday, it seems a little bit choppy. You have Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir saying, from their words we learned that you can burn Truma Torah, Truma Tameya on Erev Pesach. And then you go into what? It says, and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua agree that you can burn them separately. So where do Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer come in? Oh, now it makes sense. Because ultimately, again, Rabbi Meir is saying is Midivrehem means from the Machlokes, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, we learned that halacha lemaisa, you can go ahead and burn Truma Tamei and Truma Tahora on Erev Pesach together. And then it quotes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua themselves. So both say, so this is very exciting. So again, pause here for just a moment. So both say, this is really great. So now we're beginning to clarify our shita. So we got Rabbi Chanina down, we've got Rabbi Akiva down, and now it appears that when Rabbi Meir says, Midivrehem la mandur, from their words we learned that on Erev Pesach you could burn Truma Torah, Truma Tameya. Midivrehem is a reference to Rabbi Yoshua, in the specific case of the barrel of Truma wine that breaks in the upper vat, about to leak down into the lower vat with Chulin Tameyan. Rabbi Yoshua says, I want to be clear. Obviously, if you could find a tar utensil and salvage any amount of the Truma wine, then what? Then of course you do that. But in a case where that is not possible, all I have are Kalim Tameyan, Rabbi Yoshua says, good, the Truma wine is lost anyway, so you might as well catch it even in the Kalim Tameim and ultimately save the Chulin. So from here you see that once you're destroying something already, to be goreim, to cause additional Tumah, is really inconsequential to us. So the Gemara goes right to Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua, so to Rav Nachman said the name of Rabba bar Avua, Masnisin, Ba'av hatuma da'oraisa, Vlad hatuma da'oraisa. So we'll say, so again, once again they're saying that this is Rabbi Chanina's case. Rabbi Chanina's Kanakon, in his case was an Av hatuma da'oraisa with a Vlad hatuma da'oraisa. So we'll say, so again, as remember again, we floated before the possibility that Rabbi Chanina's Kanakon, maybe he was talking about da'oraisa tuma with Rabbanon tuma, to which the Gemara says, no. Rabbi Chanina is talking about a Rishon with the Sheni mida'oraisa. Umay midivrehem, and when Rabbi Meir says from their words, whose words was he referring to? Midiv Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua. From the words of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua. So we'll say very exciting. So now again we have, I feel like, right, the whole day yesterday after the daf, walking around in a fog. Who is Rabbi Meir talking about? Who's Divrei? And finally the fog has lifted, the fog has dissipated, the sun is shining, there's clarity. We know that Rabbi Meir gleans his shita from Rabbi Yoshua in the case of the barrel of Truma wine. Beautiful. Says the Gemara, Esvei Rav Nachman. So Rava raised the kasha on Rav Nachman, and he said the following. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Ein hanidon dome l'raya. Ultimately, again, so remember again, I will say this is. See, he said we're gonna pick up. Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Amar Rabbi Yossi Rav Meir, Ein hanidon dome l'raya. So remember again, this is in the Mishnah itself. After Rabbi Meir goes ahead and makes his statement, Rabbi Meir says, "Midivreim lamandir." From their words we learned, and now we establish their words as a reference to Rabbi Yoshua, that you can burn Truma Tamei or Truma Tahora. So remember again, I will say, after that, what happens? Rabbi Yossi comes along and he says, "Ein min amida." No, the comparison is not good. So now comes the Gemara and says, so Rava comes along and says to Rav Nachman, let's analyze based on what you said. How do we understand Rabbi Yossi's statement in the Mishnah? Because when the rabbis gave their testimony, what was their shita? Im al habasar shnitma bevlat hatuma shesarfen also im habasar shnitma ba'avatuma zetame v'zetame. So remember again, Rabbi Yossi comes along and he says to Rabbi Meir, you are gleaning an incorrect conclusion. Because let's analyze this. If you're looking at Rabbi Chanina's case, what was Rabbi Chanina's case? It was burning tamei meat with tamei meat. They're both tamei. It's true, one was a rishon, one was a sheni, but at the end of the day, they're both tamei. And if you want to say, and if you want to reference Rabbi Akiva's case, that we're talking about again, shemen, which is a shlishi, because he came in contact with a tvul yom, and a ner, which might be an av, let's say, because they came in contact with a mace, zeh pasal v'zeh tamei. I will say, so remember again, Rabbi Yossi comes along and says to Rabbi Meir, you're gleaning an incorrect conclusion. Because in all of the aforementioned cases in the Mishnah, you're dealing with two items that are already tamei. So it's true, both Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Akiva are saying that once an item is tamei, you could destroy it together with an item that has a higher level of tumah than itself. But lamaisa, af anu modim b'truma shenit meis bevlada tuma shesarfen also b'truma shenit meis ba'ava tuma. So Rabbi Yossi will say, Rabbi Meir, the most I will agree to you with is that what? If on Erev Pesach you have two forms of tamei truma, right? Let's say you have rishon truma, and you have shlishi truma or sheni truma. Then Allah you could burn those together. Aval heich nisraf hatluya imatmeya. But Allah say ultimately again, even in a case of safek, how can you burn safek truma together with an item that is fully tamei? Maybe shema yavo eliyav yitarena. Maybe Eliyahu Hanavi will come along and ultimately go ahead and what? Be mitared. Before you turn the page, take a look at Rashi. Last Rashi left. Shemi Yavo Eliyahu la'achar zman. Maybe Eliyahu will come after the zman iser. V'yomar tahora haisa v'nimtza lemafreya shetimena truma biyadayim. Af al pishi to unasrefam v'mnei iser chametz astral tam biyadayim. So we'll say this is very interesting. So now we'll say the Gemara is quoting over here another brayso. The brayso indicates to us as follows. That remember, in our Mishnah, the only way it read is Rabbi Meir makes a statement, just follow the progression here. Rabbi Meir makes a statement, from their words we learned that on Erev Pesach you could burn Truma Tamei or Truma Tahora. Rabbi Yossi comes along and says, Eino min hamida. It's not comparable. It's not comparable. The brayso here now expands on what do you mean it's not comparable? So Rabbi Yossi says to Rabbi Meir, the reason why this is a kasha is because from Rabbi Yossi's response to Rabbi Meir, it makes it sound like Rabbi Meir is going on the shitos of Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Akiva. So based on that, Rabbi Yossi says to Rabbi Meir, you're gleaning an incorrect comparison. Because in both Rabbi Meir's case both Rabbi Chanina's case as well as Rabbi Akiva's case, you're dealing with destroying tamei. They're both tamei items. Right? It's true. One is more tamei, one is less tamei, one is a rishon, one is a sheni, one is an av, one is a shlishi. But they're still both tamei. And at the end of the day, that's all they're teaching us, that two items that are already tamei can be burned together. Rabbi Yossi, but listen to this. Rabbi Yossi says to Rabbi Meir, the truth is, I don't think you should even be able to take an item that is vadai tamei and burn it together with a safek tamei item. Why not? Because Rabbi Yossi says, what am I afraid of? Maybe you're going to burn the safek tamei item, then what's going to happen? Eliyahu Navi is going to come. When is Eliyahu Navi going to come? I will say instantly, he's going to come on Erev Pesach. I will say that's interesting, because what did we learn on Erev Shabbos? That Eliyahu Navi doesn't come on Erev Yom Tiv. Okay, good. And what's going to happen? Eliyahu Navi is going to come along and he's going to say, that item that you burned, in fact, was not really tamei. And therefore, it turns out that what? That I burnt a tamei item with a tar item. That's why I'm so I just want to pause here for just a moment. I think this is fascinating and incredibly troubling. So we'll say, it sounds like from this Gemara that Eliyahu Navi will come along and tell us that things that we did were incorrect, which is really quite fascinating. Because normally you're going to say, what's Eliyahu Navi's, what's his role in halacha? What's Eliyahu Navi's role in halacha? Right. So two things. Number one, that Eliyahu is going to straighten out yichus, because again, remember there are kohanim who think they're not kohanim, Yisraelim who don't know they're kohanim. So straighten out yichus. Let's say even in yichus, the one thing Eliyahu Navi won't do is what? Is incredible? Is expose mamzerus. If someone is a mamzer, I don't mean like, that guy's a mamzer. I mean like somebody's really a mamzer. So the Gemara says, Mishpacho shenitmu'u nitmu'u. Not nitmu with an aleph, but nitma with an ayin. Literally again, genealogy that has been hidden will remain hidden. It's amazing enough. Eliyahu Navi will not expose mamzerus. So let's say it's interesting. So I often think what that means is that if Eliyahu Navi understands, the worst thing you could ever do to a person is go ahead and make them feel bad about something that they cannot correct. Right? I'm sure we've all been on the receiving end of that, and it's the worst thing in the world. Now, sometimes you have to point out something that's incorrect in order that I could grow from it. I don't repeat it again. But I will say, but if I know what I did is incorrect, to go ahead and point it out, or if I can't do anything about it, there's nothing to learn, it's the worst thing in the world. It's the worst thing in the world because you just feel terrible, and Mamash there's nothing you could do. So I think it's fascinating here that Eliyahu Hanavi may come along and point out the fact, oh, but yeah, you thought that was Safek Tameh, it was tar. It was actually tar, and it turned out that you burned Truma Tahora with Truma Tameya. So what exactly Eliyahu Hanavi would gain in doing that, I don't know. So I have to look a little bit more, because I've never seen this about Eliyahu Hanavi telling me that something that I did was incorrect. He's normally there, and by the way, he's also there for tekus, right? Tekus, Tishbi Tarz Kushi of Zibayos. There's a whole bunch of unanswered questions. In any event, I was like, but the point over here, what do you see from here? It appears from here that ultimately, again, from the way that Rabbi Yossi responds to Rabbi Meir, is that Rabbi Meir is gleaning his shita not from Rabbi Yoshua, but rather from where? From where? From either Rabbi Chanina or from Rabbi Akiva. Furthermore, Amud Beis, Hapigol v'hanoser v'hatome. So we'll say now it gets very interesting as well. So we'll say Pigol noser tame. So remember, Pigol means that halacha l'maisa, if a kohen, when he's doing the avodah, has in mind to do something illegal with the carbon. For example, he has in mind when he's offering it that he's going to eat it past the prescribed time, or that he's going to sprinkle the blood in the wrong way. Amazing enough for both say that machshava, that thought of doing something illegal with the carbon, it validates the carbon itself, which is quite dramatic. Pigul, nosar, means a carbon ultimately again that is left over past its prescribed time, vahatame, or an item ultimately again that is tummy. Now Rashi says over here, hatame, basar kodesh shenitma, the kaim alan parak achron, the gazra alein shiyitmu sayadayim. So let's listen to this. The halacha is sacrificial meat that is tummy also conveys tumah to the hands. The afapi shen ocham tami adam, and even though normally again food can transmit tumah to a person, gazra alehen letame mihas asayadayim, v'lo letame esaguf. Mishum chashadi akoin va'atzlei koin k'darfishin hasam va'afilu achi de'is alayu tumah d'rabbanan. Supposed to say now, okay, before we go on. Supposed to say, so therefore I have pigol, nosar, and tameh. So again, remember, pigol, koin has an erroneous machshava. Nosar, any carbonic meat left over after its prescribed time. Tameh, Rabbi say, refers ultimately again to sacrificial meat which became tameh. And I will say midrabanan, that tameh meat conveys tumah to hands, tiyadayim. So if a kohen were to touch it, he would take on a level of rabbinic tumah. So watch this. Beis Shammai omrim ein nisrafin ka'achos. Beis Shammai says that you cannot burn these items altogether. Ubeis Hillel omrim nisrafin ka'achos. Beis Hillel says yes, you can. Then Abu said, now go back to that Rashi. I started that Rashi v'hatame. So now watch this. Amri Beis Shammai de'in sarfin pigol v'nosar shem mitamim min haTorah imatam mishutam min haTorah v'kosh came mitrum tahoro tmeya. So watch this. So Beis Shammai says you cannot go ahead and burn pigol and nosar together with tameh. The Rabbi say, now why not? Because here's what's interesting: pigol and nosar ultimately again do not convey tumah midoraisa. They're not tameh midoraisa. Pigol, and this is very interesting. Pigol and nosar are what Rabbi say? They're asar, but they're not tameh. Very interesting. They're asar, but they're not tameh. Tameh is tameh, right? So therefore, listen to this. This is incredible. Beis Shammai does not allow you to burn pigol, nosar, and tameh together. But Beis Hillel, interestingly enough, allows it. If you finish that Rashi says over here, one more time, Beis Shammai dein serve pigol v'nosar shein tameh min haTorah ima tameh shu tameh min haTorah. B'kosh ke b'tshuma Torah. So what says? So Beis Shammai, who doesn't allow you to go ahead and what? Burn pigol, nosar, and tameh together, certainly will not allow you to what? Burn Truma Tameya together with Truma Torah on Erev Pesach. And even Beis Hillel ultimately again, who says that you can burn them together, says that you can. Why? Because Beis Hillel says, but pigol and nosar, although they are not tamei midaraisa, do have tuma midrabanan. So Rabbi says this is incredible. So Rabbi says what you see over here is as follows. Even Beis Hillel, who allows you to go ahead and burn pigol, nosar together with tameh, it's only because pigol and nosar have tuma midrabanan. Therefore, you can burn them all together. But I will say, what do you glean from this? But it would appear, based on this, that when it comes to Erev Pesach, burning truma Torah, truma tameh should be what? Should be what? Asr, according to everyone. Because I will say, it appears in halacha that the most we're finding is You could burn an item that is tamei midrabanan with an item that is tamei midoraisa, but an item that is tahor to be burned with an item that is tamei, it appears that we don't really have a basis for that. Here we go. Rabbi Meir did Rabbi Yeshua Ka'amar. So we'll say, so now, full circle over here. If you want to say, like we said before, that when Rabbi Meir says Midivreihem Lamadnu, Midivreihem says reference to who? Was reference to who? Reference to who? Rabbi Yeshua. By which case? Which case? Broken barrel of Truma. Right? If you want to say that ultimately, again, when Rabbi Meir said Midivreihem Lamadnu, from their words we learned that ultimately you could burn Truma to Meir, Truma Torah. That was reference to Rabbi Yeshua by the broken barrel. What did Rabbi Yeshua say by the broken barrel, Bosai? That if you have no tar kelim, what can you do? You could use tamei kelim to catch all of the Truma wine. Even though what? What are you actively doing? You're quote unquote causing the Truma wine to become tamei. Rabbi Yeshua says that's okay. Why? Why? Because the Truma wine is a goner anyway, right? It's done for. It's done for. So therefore, again, if you could at least go ahead and save the chulin, save the chulin. So we said that Rabbi Meir said, Midivreim meant the Shita of Rabbi Yeshua. See, if you say he was talking about the Shita of Rabbi Yeshua, Amai Mahadrele Rabbi Yossi, Mid Rabbi Chanina Skanakonim. The Rabbi say, the Mishnah makes no sense. Because remember again, Rabbi say, Rabbi Meir says his Shita, and then what does Rabbi Yossi say? Eino min amida. Eino min amida. The cases are not comparable. And Rabbi say, it is clear that when Rabbi Yossi says the cases aren't comparable, whose cases is he referring to? He's referring to the cases of Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Akiva. And he's saying, Rabbi Meir, your comparison isn't good. Because in both cases of Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Akiva, you're dealing with what? Dealing with what? Two items that are both tamei. And all they're allowing you to do is to burn an item of lower tumah together with what? Together with what? An item of higher tumah. But they're not allowing you to destroy something that is tar to go to something that's tamei. And I will say, if ultimately, again, Rabbi Meir is gleaning his shita from Rabbi Yoshua and not from Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Akiva, then Rabbi Yossi's response to him makes absolutely no sense. To which the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman, Rabbi Yossi lav adaite. So I will say, to which the Gemara from Rav Nachman says, very simple. Rabbi Yossi didn't understand Rabbi Meir's shita. Very simple. I will say, sometimes things in life are misunderstanding. Rabbi Yossi didn't understand Rabbi Meir's words. He thought, who's savar? Rabbi Meir mid Rabbi Chanina skana kon kamerle. So I will say, so yeah, you're right. So Rabbi Yossi thought that Rabbi Meir's shita was based on Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Akiva. That's what he thought. And based on that, Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Meir, your shita doesn't make sense. Because you're taking their cases, which are cases of what? Burning tamei items, dissimilar tamei items together, and using that to prove that in Erev Pesach you could burn Truma Torah, Truma Tzemeya. But it's not comparable. He didn't realize that is not where Rabbi Meir was gleaning his shita from. Va'amalei, to which Rabbi Meir responds to Rabbi Yossi, Ana mid Rabbi Yoshua ka'amina. I learned this out from Rabbi Yoshua. Va'amalei, and ultimately again to which Rabbi Yossi responds, Afilu Rabbi Yoshua nami einahi min amida. So we'll say now it gets exciting. So now follow the Mishnah. So we'll say, so just follow the progression. We've got Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohen. What does Rabbi Chanina teach us? What does Rabbi Chanina teach us? You can burn a Rishon with a Sheni. Comes on Rabbi Akiva. What does Rabbi Akiva teach us? You can burn an Av with a Shlishi. Comes along Rabbi Meir says, from their words we learned that you could even burn Truma Temeya with Truma Tahora. So we'll say, whose words is Rabbi Meir referencing? Whose words? Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua from which case? The barrel of Truma. Excellent. Comes along Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says the comparison is off. Rabbi says, because what does Rabbi Yossi say? You're comparing it to Rabbi Chanina, you're comparing it to Rabbi Akiva. Those are cases of tamei items being burnt with tamei items, but you're talking about a case of tamei and Torah being burnt. So Rabbi says, no, Rabbi Yossi, my dear friend, my beloved Chaver, you misunderstand. I'm not gleaning my shita from Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Akiva. I'm gleaning my shita from where? From Rabbi Yoshua. To which Rabbi Yossi comes back and says, no. Okay, fine. On the good misunderstanding. Even according to Rabbi Yoshua, I think you're incorrect. Even according to Rabbi Yoshua, I don't think Rabbi Yoshua would allow you to go ahead and burn Truma Temeya with Truma Torah and Erev Pesach. Why not? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yoshua nami ina min amida. Tahamod Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua shesorev zubifnei atzmo v'zubifnei atzmo. Ultimately, again, because now comes along Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Meir, because even Rabbi Yoshua agrees that on Erev Pesach, you cannot burn Truma Temeya or Truma Tahora. but rather, again, you have to burn each of them separately. To which the Gemara says, okay, I don't understand. Based on the Shita of Rabbi Yoshua, by the broken barrel of Truma wine, it should seem to fit perfectly that he would allow you to burn Truma Tameh or Truma Tahora. Mida umidahi. They seem to be the same exact case. I'll say, look at Rashi. Mida umidahi. Daha Tahora gimurahi hachavis hazos. Umishum the sofa liibut charli tamid der. Let's remember again. What are you doing in the case of the broken? In the case of the broken barrel, you have a broken barrel of Truma wine. But I'll say, what's the status of Truma wine? What's the status? What's the status? It's tar. Then I'll say, now what are you going to do? You have no tar kalim. What are you going to do? You're going to, essentially, what you're really doing is you're actively defiling the Truma wine. You're actively taking something that is tar and you're making it tameh. Now again, and the reason why you're allowed to do it, because again, it's going to become, I will say, now let's be clear. No. Don't say to save the chulin. That's incorrect. It's not to save the chulin. I will say, but rather again, once that, because remember, you're not allowed to make, you're not allowed to make Truma Tameh to save chulin. That's not the svara. The svara is that Truma wine is a goner. It's done. It's done. Because if you do nothing, what happens? It pours into the chulin tamein. So once it's already a goner, once it's already tameh, essentially, again, there's no problem you stepping in, making it tameh a few seconds earlier, and then in the byproduct of that is that you go ahead and you save the tahar wine, the chulin wine. So I'll say, now watch this. Which the Gemara says, why do you say it's not comparable? It's absolutely comparable. It's mamish the same case. We'll say this is incredible. Shiny hasam, the ika hefsid chulin. No, it's not the same case. It's not the same case. Because I will say there is another factor over here, which is the loss of the chulin. In other words, that is something. In other words, I will say, all things being equal, we would say, you know what, just leave the truma alone. Don't actively be metameyet biadayim, but essentially just allow it to become tameh on its own. One of the reasons we're allowing you to step in over here is because there is an additional loss. There is hafsid chulin. So because there's hafsid chulin, therefore halacha l'mais, that's why we allow you to step in. So Rabbi say that's why we allow you to go ahead and catch the truma wine with a tameh kli. But Rabbi say, does that svara apply to truma tameh or truma tahor on erev Pesach? No. So therefore, maybe even Rabbi Yoshua will not allow you to burn truma tameh or truma tahor on erev Pesach. Maskil for Rav Yirmiyah mas nisinam ika hafsid eitzim. That's not true. But say there is a hafsid on erev Pesach as well, which is what? That halacha l'maisa, if we don't allow you to go ahead and burn truma tahor together with truma tameh, what's going to happen? You're going to have to make another fire. If you have to make another fire costs you what? More wood. So there is a financial loss. To which the Gemara says, no, come on. Amalei hahu saba lehefsid meruba chashashu lehefsid muat lo chashashu. Rabbi say, no. In other words, when halacha allows you to do something for the sake of staving off a loss, it generally has to be a significant loss. So to lose a vat of wine, that ultimately, again, is going to be significant enough for you to allow you to catch the truma in tamei vessels. But to go ahead and, because you may lose out on some extra pieces of firewood, because you're going to have to make another pyre, that's not enough of a hefsid to allow you to burn them together. So I will say, this is really quite dramatic. So now look what's happened. We thought we had it all kind of neatly packaged away. That Rabbi Meir was ultimately learning his shita from Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua by the barrel of wine. Now the Gemara says, maybe not. Maybe even Rabbi Yoshua, who allows you to catch the truma wine in tamei utensils. Because why? Because we always thought the whole svara was once a tar item is going to be destroyed anyway, it's going to become tamei. We don't care what happens to it in the process of destruction. Now the Gemara is throwing in one more wrinkle. Maybe that's only because over here there's a loss. Normally we wouldn't allow you to do this, but because there is a loss of chulin, therefore we're going to allow you to do it. Rabbi say that svara doesn't carry over to erev Pesach. Right? There is no loss if you have to burn the truma tahora separately from the truma tamei. It's extra wood. That's a minimal loss. We don't count that in halacha as a loss. So therefore, it turns out that maybe Rabbi Yoshua by the barrel would not agree that you could burn truma tamei with truma tahora. So this is pretty incredible. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Asi, Rabbi Yochanan, machlokes b'sheish. So we'll say, watch this. So it comes on Rabbi Asi and Rabbi Yochanan. The machlokes is only in the 6th hour. Now, what does this mean? Look at Rashi. Machlokes b'sheish shadayin ein ala tahora ela isad rabbanan. Both say the machlokes of burning truma tahora truma tamei together is only a machlokes in the 6th hour in erev Pesach. Both say, what's the status of chametz in the 6th hour? What's the status? It's asur midrabanan. It's only asur midrabanan. Aval b'sheva Divrei hakol sarfin. Wow. So now another new development. But once you get into the 7th hour, where chametz is asr mid'oraisa, everyone agrees that what? That what? That halacha l'maisa you could burn chametz tahora or truma tahora with truma tamei. Look at Rashi aval b'sheva shenesra kvar min haTorah ein lecha tuma gidola mizu. The divrei hakol af Rabbi Yossi Rabbi say, wow. Says the Gemara. The only machlokes you also remember, what do you have? You have Rabbi Meir saying, Midirei Lamandu. From their words, we learned that in Erev Pesach you could burn truma tamei or truma tahora. So now, okay, we have a little bit of a problem with the sheet of Rabbi Meir because we assumed Rabbi Meir was going with the sheet of Rabbi Yoshua by the barrel of chulin wine. Now again, it's not so pashit. We're moving on from that a little bit. Comes Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Meir, your comparison is incorrect. Now the Gemara comes along and says, Rav Asi says to Rabbi Yochanan, by the way, this machlokis of burning truma tamei or truma tahora is only up through the 6th hour. Because up through the 6th hour, it's only asr midrabanan. But once you get into the 7th hour, where the isser chametz is da'araisa, the Gemara says, essentially using the wording of Rashi, once you get into the 7th hour, ein lecha tuma gidola mizo. Once chametz becomes asr midaraisa, Rabbi say that is the paradigm. Once it's asr midaraisa, that's tamei. That's truma. So Rabbi say effectively that would be a case of burning truma tamei with truma tamei. Rabbi say it's pretty incredible. So the only machlok is now interestingly enough, the whole machlok is only 1 hour. But once you get to the shas isur daraisa, everyone agrees that you could burn truma tamei with truma tahora, because effectively the truma tahora becomes tamei because it is now asr midaraisa. Incredible. Amr Rabbi Zil Rabasi, was just a few more lines. Samr Rabbi Zil Rabasi, Neima Kasav Rabbi Yochanan, Masnisin Ba'av Tuma Daraisa, Vlad Tuma Divrei. So also maybe Rabbi Yochanan understands that Rabbi Hanina's case is talking about what? It's talking about a situation of an Avatuma Daraisa, or I should say a Rishon Daraisa, together with a piece of sacrificial meat that is Tamei Midrabanan. And therefore, again, Rabbi Hanina's Kanakon is teaching us that what? You could burn Daraisa Tumah with Drabanan Tumah. Umay Midivrehem, and ultimately, again, what does it mean when Rabbi Meir said Midivrehem? Midivrei Rabbi Hanina's Kanakon. Oh, Rabbi say, and maybe again, according to this, Rabbi Meir is not gleaning his position from some outside source of Rabbi Yoshua, but rather he's gleaning it from Rabbi Hanina himself. Amar Le'in said, yes, this makes a lot of sense. Itmar Nami Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Masnisin Ba'av HaTumah D'Oraisa, Vlad HaTumah D'Rabanan. Rabbi say, in fact, now we're rewriting Rabbi Hanina's Kanakonim. And Rabbi Hanina's case is what? He says, Miyamai, in all of my days in the Beis HaMikdash, we never refrained from burning a piece of sacrificial meat that was a rishon, together with a piece of sacrificial meat that was only tamei midirabanan. And Rabbi say, by the way, what's an example of a piece of meat that is tamei midirabanan? Pigel. Excellent. Pigel, no sar. So we'll say, now it makes a lot of sense. So now Rabbi Hanina is saying, we never refrained from burning a piece of meat that was tamei daraisa, like a piece of meat that came in contact with someone who was tamei mace, with a piece of meat that was pigel or no sar. The Gemara says, ultimately again, and I will say, who does Rabbi Meir glean his shita from? From Rabbi Hanina. Umachlokes b'sheish. And the whole machlokes in general about burning chametz tzara with chametz tamei on erev Pesach, or excuse me, truma tzara truma tamei on erev Pesach is only in the 6th hour when chametz is only asr midrabanan. However, aval b'sheva, but burning it in the 7th hour, divrei hakol sarf, and everyone agrees that halacha l'maisa, you could burn it. So Rabbi say, what's coming out over here, the way the Gemara is ending off of Rabbi say is something really amazing. So first of all, quite a ride, right? Whoever thought that Tuma and Tara could be literally exhilarating. So I'll say, so now what's fascinating is as follows, is that we got thrown a little bit because we thought that we settled on the fact that Rabbi Meir was gleaning his shita from Rabbi Yoshua by the case of the chavish shal truma shenishbara, the broken barrel of truma wine. It turns out, Rabbi said, that we kind of come full circle, but this is a good full circle, and it turns out that no, Rabbi Meir is actually gleaning his shita from Rabbi Hanina's Kanakonim. Because now, Rabbi said, in yesterday's daf, we assumed Rabbi Hanina's case was what? A rishon and a sheni da'araisa. Now it turns out that what's Rabbi Hanina's case? Rabbi Hanina's case is burning a piece of meat that is a rishon, a da'araisa, together with what? a piece of meat that is aser midrabanan, tuma midrabanan, which would be a case like we saw on the top of Amud Beis, like a case of pigul and noser. Rabbi Chanina is saying in the Beis Hamikdash we never had a problem burning a piece of sacrificially tamei meat, biblically tamei meat with rabbinically tamei meat. Once you have that, Rabbosai, so watch, just follow the progression. Rabbi Meir says, midivreim, from his words, Rabbi Chanina's words, we learned that on Erev Pesach you could burn chametz tahora, truma tahora with truma tamei. Now when is Rabbi Meir saying that? During what hour of the day? Even the sixth. Because remember, Rabbi Meir is saying that halacha l'maisa, you could burn it. Because remember, what's the status of chametz during the sixth hour? It's aser midrabanan. What did Rabbi Chanina's Gana Kohanim allow for? Burning an item that is tamei d'oraisa with an item that is tamei midrabanan. If in the 6th hour Erev Pesach you have truma tahora, truma tamei, Rabbi say, what is that? The truma tamei is aser midoraisa. The truma tahora is what? Aser midrabanan. Rabbi Meir says you could burn them together during the 6th hour. Comes along Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, no, eino min amida. I don't like this comparison. But Rabbi say, now what we see is the machlokes is only in the 6th hour. But once you get to the 7th hour, everybody agrees that what? That you could burn truma tahora with truma tamei. Why? Because once you get to the 7th hour of an Isser d'oraisa, even truma tahora will be aser midoraisa. And once it's aser midoraisa, like Rashi said, ein tuma gidola mizu. Once you get into a time of biblical prohibition of chametz becomes equivalent to tamei. And therefore, again, everybody would agree that halacha l'maisa you could burn truma tahora with truma tamei. Incredible. We'll stop over here for today. We'll let Mirat Hashem pick up. We're not finished. We're not finished with this yet. We're going to continue, but at least again we have a little bit of clarity now on the sheet of Rabbi Meir. All right, Chavra on Zoom. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Knowing, are we telling you that it's tar, then pay the claim back, or we're talking about it's us or anyway?
Yeah.